Author, speaker, certified coach, and energy master, Doc White gets to the heart of what matters most. She features guests and experts to help you consciously create more success, health, and wellness in every area of your life, work, and relationships. They'll share their success stories, wisdom, and know-how to help you shine more light onto your day and into your life. Power your life right now. Here's Joanne White.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us on Power Your Life. And I'm Dr. Joanne White, and it's always a pleasure to be here and have some wonderful guests. And today we're going to focus on how you can help create and be responsible for a more vibrant, longer life. And I have just the expert who's going to help us with that. And I'm talking about Dr. Greg Hammer, who is a professor at Stanford University School of Medicine, a pediatric intensive care physician, a pediatric anesthesiologist, and the author of Gain Without Pain, the Happiness Handbook for Healthcare Professionals, and so much more. He is also been a former member of the Stanford WellMD initiative and the past chair of the Physician Wellness Task Force for the California Society of Anesthesiologists, as well as a member of the Wellness Committee for the American Society. He shares his knowledge about red light therapy, which we'll touch upon later on, and all the ways that it can help you live a longer as well as a healthier life. Dr. Hammer is also a mindfulness expert and the #1 best-selling author of this book, which we're going to talk about too. A little bit on red light therapy. It's been well documented and research practice since the 1990s, and it can help. Well, we'll have Dr. Hammer talk about that a little bit. Dr. Greg Hammer, how are you? And it's a pleasure to have you. How are you doing?
Great to be with you, Joanne. I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Wonderful. So before we get into anything else, since I touched upon that, tell us a little bit about red light therapy and what your role is with that.
Well, red light therapy is simply the use of particular wavelength of light for its healing and anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, anti-aging properties. So it was, I think, as you referenced, noted in the 90s by NASA that astronauts who were using red light to accelerate growth of tomatoes in space actually noticed that little wounds on their hands were healing more quickly. So I think the benefits of red light therapy, which is kind of a popular biohack these days, are mainly proven sort of on the shell of our body, our skin, hair, mouth, but there are also really exciting areas of research with regard to brain function, specifically memory, for example, and potentially neurodegenerative disorders like dementia. So it's an exciting field, actually, because it's non-invasive and people can even use it at home.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that. So people can actually utilize it themselves. How do they do that? How do they get access to that?
Well, there are a number of many, in fact, devices that are available if you just search online. And it's kind of a confusing area because there are relatively inexpensive devices, which may be handheld, for example. And then you can get panels that are much more expensive. And there are a lot of claims being made by the manufacturers. So I think it is like other areas in health and longevity that there are a lot of biohacks out there, companies making a lot of claims, not all of which are well substantiated. But, I think if one goes with a very high quality product, reads reviews carefully, I have panels at home in my gym, and, I think people have to sort of do their own homework.
Yeah, I think I want one after what you're telling me about it. I think that's great. So thank you. So you also, are a health enthusiast and a meditator, and you're using this mindfulness-based approach that's called the GAIN method and more. Can you explain a little bit about the GAIN method to our listeners?
Sure. Well, I think, if we want to be more resilient and recover from acute stress, which is certainly something we all experience probably even on a daily basis, if we want that resilience, then we need to focus on our physical well-being. And you and I mentioned sleep, exercise, and nutrition being the fundamentals of our physical well-being. But we also have to focus on our mental and spiritual well-being. And that's what the GAIN practice is. It's basically it's a lifestyle, if you will, but it starts with a morning 3 to 5 minute mindfulness meditation practice where we focus on slow, deep, deliberate breathing, and then do a self-guided contemplative meditation involving gratitude, the G in GAIN, acceptance, the A, intention, and non-judgment. Those are the 4 pillars of what I think are key to our mental and spiritual well-being: gratitude, acceptance, intention, non-judgment. So it's a brief practice we do in the morning, and it's integrated with the breath, and we can kind of return to those principles during the day to bring ourselves back into greater awareness of what's happening right now.
I think those principles are so very, very important in terms of us leading a very much of an authentic life and feeling good about who we are and what we're doing. So I think it's great. So tell us how you got involved in all of this, the nutrition, the GAIN method, the meditation, and also this book that you said that it's for healthcare professionals, but it really seems that it's just for everybody too, in terms of being able to embrace some of the practices that are involved in the book.
Yes, absolutely. And, most of the conversations I'm having with people like you are not related to the healthcare sector per se. It's just that my publisher at the time thought I should be focused in the subtitle of the book, I guess, as much as anything. And the stories in the book have a lot to do with the practice of medicine and medical and healthcare practitioners, but it's really generally applicable to everybody because, these principles of gratitude, acceptance, intention, and non-judgment are really embraced by, I think, practically all philosophic and religious traditions, and they're certainly not of my own device, and they're principles that bring us more happiness and take advantage of the ability of our brain really to be rewired. If we have a plan, that's the I in GAIN is intention, we have to have a plan, because if we just sort of relax into our default mode, we're all rather negative and doubting and very judgmental, especially when it comes to ourselves. So the good news is we can change the way we think. There are a lot of people writing about this now, which is wonderful. And this is just the book is sort of a guide as to how to embrace these principles and rewire our brains to be happier.
So how did you come up with this, by the way?
Well, I got involved in a long-time interest in meditation and nutrition. My undergraduate degree is in nutritional science. And it was a big part of my practice in the intensive care unit, where unfortunately we tend to starve our patients who are critically ill. So I've had a long-term interest in physical well-being, in nutrition and physical fitness and so on, and also in mental health. So I got involved in this directive at Stanford that you mentioned, the WellMD initiative, and that was convened in response to the growing prevalence of burnout among doctors, and the consequences are dire in terms of decrement in patient care, physician suicide, physicians leaving Stanford, which is, often very disruptive and expensive to replace physicians. So that involvement in the WellMD initiative sort of expanded, and then I had some sabbatical time, and I decided to write the book after being invited to give several talks on the topic. So it's been kind of a long and interesting road, like most of us experience in our lives. We never know what's happening next, but it sort of evolved naturally, and it's I'm rolling up my sleeves and continuing to dig deeper.
That's beautiful, because I believe we're lifelong learners, and there's so much more as we move on in our life, too. So we talked a little bit, you touched upon it, the tripod of health, sleep, exercise, and nutrition. Can you explain a little bit about how people can incorporate that in their lives, what that means in terms of being able to embrace all that so that they feel healthier, more vibrant?
Yes, absolutely. You know, we all get a bit off the rails at times. Many of us suffer from depression. Of course, if the depression is really disabling, then I certainly recommend getting professional help. But with regard to milder forms of depression and just our general negativity, just the way our brains are wired, the cure for that, at least in part, is to really focus on the fundamentals of our physical well-being, because that is so integrated with our mental well-being. And we sort of know what to do, right? I mean, the principles of sleep hygiene. So we're not sleeping well, we get fatigued, we tend to pick up sugary and fatty so-called comfort foods to give us a boost. We crash, we're too tired to exercise. So sleep, exercise, and nutrition are very tightly interwoven. And so it starts with sleep. Sleep is a very active, important process. Lots of essential processes are happening in the brain while we sleep. It's not just a passive endeavor. And we just need to focus on our sleep hygiene. And you know, there's really perhaps 10 items there. Going to bed and waking up at the same time every day, if possible. Avoiding the blue light from our screens proximate to the time of bedtime. Caffeine, I would recommend people who are sensitive to it, like I am, don't have it after about 10 or 11 in the morning, because the half-life of caffeine is very long. So there's a number of things that we can do to improve the quality of our sleep, and that's a great step in the right direction with regard to our health. And then likewise with a plan of intelligent exercise, and similarly with what we eat and even when we eat. So the principles are relatively straightforward, and we just need to focus and develop a plan if we want to really enjoy better health and live a longer, healthier life.
You know, I think that's so important, and people need to kind of look at that and decide what their body needs, their mind, whatever, because I'm with you. If I have coffee after a certain time, I could be up for hours and hours and not really being very happy about it. So I learned that the hard way, too. And that's important to know what your body can handle. Now, I have a question for you, because many years ago, and I'm very much involved in meditation and everything that you're talking about here, but I had an injury, and so I was not able to do sitting meditation, and I developed a walking meditation that also incorporates gratitude and everything else. I mean, you were talking about being still, and so is there any difference in that? Because to me, that's what I'm doing every morning, is I go out and I do my walking meditation and gratitude and whatever, and that's how I start my day.
No, I think that's wonderful. There's no, specific recipe. I think the idea is to learn how to focus our attention on our breath, first of all, which is so important. Very slow, deep breathing, inhaling slowly through the nose, maybe to a count of 3, pausing to a count of 3, and having a controlled exhalation, maybe to a count of 4, into our belly, into our chest. We can do that when we're sitting or walking, and that activates our vagus nerve and our parasympathetic nervous system, and that is the side of our sort of unconscious nervous system that counteracts the fight or flight response, the stress response. So just the breathing, whether you're sitting or walking, is extremely helpful, and it's a tool that we can always return to. It's always available. And then integrating thoughts of gratitude, as you mentioned, intrinsic to happiness. People can imagine someone or maybe know somebody who's poor and happy, or maybe physically challenged and happy, but you can't really imagine somebody who's ungrateful and happy. So this is a sort of a mindful practice that we can cultivate. And so doing it while you're walking, if you're, not too distracted by traffic or, when's the next curb or what have you, sitting is nice because you can really focus your thoughts and not worry about what's happening around you. But certainly walking, driving, these are tools that we can invoke at all times during the day. And just even going to the breath, slow, intentional, deep breathing is a great practice. So I certainly endorse walking meditation or, meditation in pretty much any posture is wonderful.
Thank you. Beautiful. So a lot of people, mindfulness has been around for a long time, and that's something that I'm a proponent of. But a lot of people don't know what that is and what that means. Can you explain that a little bit and how you utilize that in your practice?
Sure. Well, I like Dr. John Kabat-Zinn's definition. He's certainly one of the fathers or grandfathers of what we call mindfulness practice. He introduced that into his clinic in the University of Massachusetts in the late 70s, treating people with PTSD and depression that was refractory to treatment otherwise, and had great success, and things kind of grew from there. But his definition of mindfulness, which I love, is simply being aware of the present moment on purpose, non-judgmentally. So again, if you focus on the present moment, what's happening right now? What are your thoughts? What are your sensations? Then, a lot of your fear and anxiety and negativity just sort of dissolve. So if we can bring our focus back to the present, we tend to be happier. And the next ingredient, awareness of the present moment on purpose. Why on purpose? Because our minds naturally, if you close your eyes and you try to just focus on what's happening right now, your mind will naturally go to the future. You're worried about the list of things you have to do later, or you're embarrassed about something you said or didn't do yesterday. So you have to have a plan if you want to be able to develop the skill of focusing on the present moment. Awareness of the present moment on purpose, but mentally. And again, judgment is rather negative because we have a negativity bias. So we judge others, the world, and most harshly ourselves rather negatively. So the good news is we have this wonderful property called neuroplasticity. We can rewire our brain to learn how to drop judgment. And so I think those are three essential ingredients in mindfulness practice: awareness of the present moment, having a plan on purpose, non-judgmentally. And I love that definition.
That's great, and I think it's so important to be able to be at that place and to really quiet our minds, because we can do that. And it's beautiful when your mind is just quiet and soothing, in a way. I've had to learn, actually teach myself years ago how to do that because of what was going on in my brain.
Yes, I mean, we all need to have a plan if we want to really learn the skill of simply being present, because, again, our mind is not naturally focused on what's happening right now. We tend to go to the future or the past. So it is a skill we do have to practice, just like getting our muscles in shape and, learning good habits, daily life, sleep hygiene, exercise, nutrition, how these can all be so beneficial. But we do have to have a plan.
I think that's so important. I really do. Now, you also talk a lot about intermittent fasting, and not everybody knows what that means, and not everybody can do it or knows how to do it. So can you explain that a little bit, and why, what's the positivity to doing that and when we need to?
Sure. Well, I think that there's a fascinating body of science on how the cells in our body respond to either conditions of plenty, if you will, or conditions of lack. So what is condition of plenty means? If your cells are constantly being supplied with glucose from your blood, sugar from your blood, lots of nutrients, they want to grow, they want to multiply, they want to grow. When you're in a state of relative lack, such as when you're fasting and you don't have a constant supply of relatively high blood sugar bathing your cells in sugar and other nutrients, your cells tend to turn inward and do reparative processes. They fix DNA fragments, get rid of junk protein and materials that tend to accumulate inside the cell. And that's what we want. We want that for at least certain parts of the day. So how can we do that? Well, intermittent fasting can be done a variety of ways. The simplest way may be to eat within about an 8-hour period during the day and not eat for the other 16 hours during the day. And so after 8 or 10 hours of not eating, your cells sort of go into this mode in which there's a relative lack of nutrients being delivered to them, and they will go inward and start to do cellular repair that tends to mitigate aging, and essentially. And so this can also be done by having very little caloric intake for 2 days a week, another version of intermittent fasting, or not eating at all, truly fasting for 24 hours once a week, or for a longer period, even once a month. There's a lot of ways to do this, but the idea is that if we always eat every time we're a little bit hungry, our cells don't really have enough time in this reparative mode. They're always sort of growing, and that's not necessarily what we want 24 hours a day.
You know, that's so interesting that when we're not eating, there's that sense of reparation, that we're really repairing what's going on, and a lot of people don't know that. So, but it doesn't have to be where you're totally not eating. It could be, can you be drinking something that's healthy, or
I think I think the idea is not to have caloric containing fluids and food for, if you're doing the 8-16 plan, you don't eat till 11 in the morning maybe, and you're done eating at 7 p.m. Or you can shift that earlier or later, whatever might work in your lifestyle, and it may not be convenient at all, but that's the idea. So I think during the 16 hours, the idea is not to have fluid or food with sugar or fat or protein to any extent. So you can drink water, tea, non-caloric fluids, and so on, but should really limit it to that. It's kind of like, my analogy is you're not happy with your house, and if you have a lot of money and there are a lot of houses available, you might want to go out and look for a bigger house. So if you're in a situation of plenty, you sort of look outward. However, if you're short on money and maybe there's not very many houses available, you can't find one you like, you turn inward and you fix the house that you have. And so that's what our cells are doing when they're exposed to this condition of lack. And that analogy works for me. And so I think we want to treat our bodies in this fashion, and there's lots of benefits.
I love it. Yeah. I learned that for myself, sometimes if I'm not eating over a period of time, my head hurts and I can't think. But to do it in another way, which I've learned, like you said, like to not eat or stop eating at a certain time before I sleep or whatever, in the evening, that really helps, because it does. I don't have those side effects that some other people could have too.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's also eating proximate to the time of bedtime may interfere with your sleep. So, especially if you have a glass of wine with a meal, and alcohol, so you really don't want to have alcohol proximate to the time of going to sleep. So I think there are a lot of benefits just generally finishing your evening meal on the early side, and then not eating for as long as you can after that. 16 hours would be great.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Now, you also talk a lot about different kinds of dietary supplements that actually help the repair, the cellular repair process, and also just work with inflammation and other kinds of things. Firstly, how did you get into all that? That's fascinating, and I'm very much into this.
Yeah, as I said, I actually got very interested in nutritional science when I was in college. I became a vegetarian when I was 18, and I was interested in sports and being in great physical shape, so I thought it would be helpful for me to learn how to eat well so that I get enough protein and other nutrients from not eating meat. So I got into it then, and I found it so fascinating, and so it's always been an interest of mine. As I said, it was an integral part of my critical care practice, teaching the students, residents, and fellows about the importance of nutrition in our critically ill population. And so, my interest in nutrition is long time fascination of mine. And there's so much emerging science on the nutrients in the fruits and vegetables and other foods that we eat, and how certain chemicals in those foods, which are naturally occurring, of course, are so beneficial to our health. They actually stimulate processes that tend to mitigate the aging process, and they do that through lowering oxidative stress and inflammation in the cell. So, the example I gave you, fasting is
I
one.
wanted you to cite some of those for our list.
Yeah, absolutely. So, there are, as I said, the cleanup processes that cells embark upon include eliminating the junk inside the cells, and that can be aging mitochondria, that can be proteins, that can be DNA fragments. That's called autophagy, sort of consuming itself, if you will. The cells need to do that to clean themselves up and improve their cellular efficiency. So there are substances in food. They're called lecithin, quercetin, berberine. Those are a few. They're in, dark leafy vegetables and other foods, and they can be taken easily as a supplement as well. And they promote this autophagy process. So that's just one example of how nutrients in foods that are available to us or as supplements can actually slow down the process of aging by improving cellular function.
And, it's so important to be able to know what these are and also to utilize them because they do help and they make you feel better. And if it's slowing down the aging process, I'm all for that. That's important.
Yeah, it's a little bit like red light therapy. There are a lot of claims made. The supplement industry is not regulated by the FDA. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. So you do have to educate yourself and decide what's right for you. You can't take 100 different supplements every day. People may get carried away, and also some of them are rather expensive. So it's really important to do as much homework as you can and maybe find somebody who's an expert that you really believe in, who's not touting every supplement on the planet. So it's a little bit of a minefield in terms of becoming educated and not just reading everything available online that may be in fact promoted by a company for self-interest. So you do have to educate yourself.
And, that's really important because, again, if you go online, you're going to see how something is so wonderful because the company's promoting it. But then if you look more carefully, you recognize that that's not really true. But you have to do the research, and that's important. So just don't take some companies, this is fantastic, it's great, and we can get duped by that, and a lot of people do, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I would really recommend discounting claims that are made by a company promoting a product. Rather, I would look at, personally I read a lot of scientific peer-reviewed literature. Not everybody has access to that or has a skill to do that, but maybe find a few experts that you really that resonate with you and who are without conflicts of interest. So each of us should disclose what our conflicts are. If we're making money from promoting a product, that should be made clear. But maybe find somebody who you trust, maybe a few different points of view, people who are not conflicted and who are disclosing what their potential conflicts of interest are.
I think that's important for companies to do that, but they don't always disclose that information, and so it's a little bit of a real search, like you're describing. I have a question for you. Some of us, including me, have bringing in our ears. Okay, I have looked at so many different companies, ordered supplements, and also seen very different information about it. One, that it's not about your ears, it's about your brain. Another, that it's not about your brain, that it's about your breath. I mean, do you have any insight into this at all?
Well,
please.
A good example of a malady that for which a lot of claims are made. So yes, I would be cautious about trying supplements or other products for tinnitus, which is what you're describing. And I have it as well. I don't really notice it so much until I'm sort of lying down at night and there's not ambient sound. but I haven't come across any cure for it. So I think it's one of those things that, in all likelihood, we're not going to be able to change, and so we need to work on acceptance, the A in gain. Certainly, there are things that bother all of us about our health, and if we focus on them, we sort of amplify them. I think tinnitus is one of those things that, for the most part, most of us are just going to have to accept. I mean, if it's excessive, then maybe go see an ENT physician and have it checked out. But the common variety of tinnitus, the ringing in the ears, is just something that we have to put up with, I think.
So it doesn't mean that our brain is being destroyed, like they're saying.
No. No. I mean,
Thank you. It's scary when you read some of that stuff, and there are several companies that are tooting that, and it's like, wait a minute, I don't want my brain to, anyway, thank you. That's important. So what's next for you? You do so many wonderful things. You're helping so many people, and doing so with a lot of traditional and non-traditional approaches that I really respect. So what's next?
Now it's about teenagers, really written for those who care for teenagers, parents, teachers, school administrators, social workers, etc. It's really about the stress that teens face and having a mindfulness-based approach for caring for teenagers. So the title at the moment is A Mindful Teen, and hopefully we'll have the book wrapped up in the next 4 to 6 months. So that I'm working on.
Okay, good.
Expand my online presence as a teacher to help people basically enjoy better health. And, that's my mission.
And that's important. So in terms of social media and people being on their cell phones and other kinds of things, what kind of recommendation do you have for us? Limit the amount of time one is on social media and even exposed to the news. I think we all have to decide what's best for us. And, again, apply some intention because we're being bombarded with very stressful information all the time, whether it's social media, shaming, bullying, this idea of the perfect persona and body and so on, or it's just too much news and, repetitive information coming our way about things that are, very tragic and uncomfortable and things that we can't change. So just have a plan. Identify what's best for you as an individual. How much news do you want in your day, and how much social media do you want in your day, and be intentional about it and create some boundaries. I think that would be my number one piece of advice. And I think that's so important. Oftentimes, like I do a lot of walking and out in nature, and oftentimes I see people who are on their phones walking with their children or their animals, and I'm thinking, this is a perfect opportunity to connect and to converse or share or learn or whatever, but not if you're totally absorbed on your phone. So think about that, because I think we're missing opportunities for real connection.
Absolutely.
How do you feel about that?
Oh, no, I think that's absolutely true. And even how we interact with our phones, we have a little tone for a text coming in, and do we feel compelled to look at our phone immediately? So I think we need boundaries. We need to be very intentional about that, because, again, if we just sort of go with our default mode of behavior, we get wrapped up in a lot of negativity and a lot of habitual behavior that's really not healthy for us.
Beautifully expressed. When is your next book coming out? I'm excited about it.
Well, we're honing in. I have a book agent, and hopefully we have a publisher now who wants to publish the book. And then, these things take some time, so I think the book probably won't be out for another 10 to 12 months. But we'll keep you posted. Definitely,
yeah. I have a background working with children with autism and special needs as a teacher many years ago. So, yeah, I'm very interested. So, Dr. Greg Hammer, tell our listeners how they could find out more about you, your program, get in touch with you, keep up, buy this book, Gain Without Pain.
Yes, I think just my website, my primary website, greghammermd.com, GREGHAMMERMD.com. And there's the book is on Amazon and elsewhere. I see that it's showing up in a lot of used book sites, which I guess is a good thing. It means it's getting around. But greghammermd.com, link to the book on Amazon, and a lot of media and other information there.
Good. Now, I just want people to know that even though it's initially for healthcare professionals, what's in the book applies to everybody. So don't let that, deter you from buying it, right?
Right. Well, thank you for that. Yes, I think that's correct.
Okay. So you are amazing. I love what you're teaching and your belief system. What would you like to leave our listeners with today, Dr. Greg Hammer?
I think that anybody who's listening should know that this negativity bias that we all have is not anybody's dirty little secret. We all tend to gravitate toward negative thoughts and focus on negative experiences. So the good news is that there are ways to change that, to rewire our brains, and it takes a plan. It takes intention to achieve better physical health and better mental health. So there's hope for all of us, and we're not alone. And so let's remember that we're a part of a larger community, and we can help each other quite a bit if we just engage in the community.
I think that's so very important. Now, do you recommend a specific meditation? Do you teach a specific meditation to your patients or no?
Well, no, I recommend the Gain meditation, which is, in the book. It's a simple 3 to 5 minute meditation that we can do in the morning and access throughout the day by simply going back to the breath and one or more of these principles of gratitude, acceptance, intention, and non-judgment. We do our Gain meditation. We have a cup of coffee. We're driving to work, and somebody cuts us off on the road. We start to make all these judgments. A light bulb goes off, and we recognize we're being judgmental, and we have a little laugh to ourselves and get a dopamine hit instead of an adrenaline hit. So this practice sort of self-reinforcing the longer we do it. And so that is the meditation that I practice and teach. And, there are lots of other ways to meditate, but this is a very simple practice that can be done in just a few minutes every morning.
And it has long-lasting effects throughout the day, so it's really very important for people to utilize that. Dr. Hammer, thank you so much for everything that you do and for who you are, and have a beautiful day, and thanks for being on Power Your Life.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Anytime. It's been fun.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So think about what Dr. Greg Hammer said, because this is a way to really get yourself in gear, to feel better about who you are, to feel better about what's going on in your day, to really accentuate your health and your longevity. And it's so very important to do that and to take care of yourself. And taking care of yourself is key to feeling good, to being healthy, to being able to be there for others, and so much more. So remember to do that, and remember what Dr. Greg Hammer said, and also that meditation that you can do, the Gain meditation, because it just really incorporates gratitude and non-judgment and intention and acceptance, and that can be something that you work throughout the day. So thank you so much for joining us, and have a day that you can focus on feeling good about who you are, feeling intentional about what you're putting out to others and what you're putting out to yourself and to the world.
You've been listening to the Power Your Life radio show with host and author Dr. Joanne White. Listen often and spread the word about the upbeat show to enrich you and grow your life in the direction you desire. Listen again and again and visit docwhite.org for more information and find out how Dr. Joanne can benefit you. Thank you for sharing your day with us, and stay tuned for more exciting guests and events to come.